everyone, my name is Madison and I'm the Student Ministry Associate at Colonial. I'm sure a lot of you have seen me around and you might have heard little bits and pieces of my story, but I'm going to share a little bit about where I come from and how that's shaping how I'm thinking about God these days. So if you know any part of my story, you know that I went to Bethel University, and coming out of Bethel, I was pretty involved there with ways of thinking about God that were kind of viewing the Bible as a set of rules and making God into this angry father in the sky, or at least that's how I was thinking of it back then. And so coming out of that tradition, there was a lot that I was unpacking, and there was a lot that I was undoing about my understanding of God. And I think it kind of got to a point where I was defining everything I believed by what I didn't believe anymore. And so part of that looked like I didn't believe that God was an angry father in the sky anymore. I didn't believe that the Bible was only a set of rules that we're supposed to follow. I didn't believe that if we don't agree on all the same issues that you're going to go to hell. And so, I was really defining my faith as what was different than the faith I had when I was at Bethel. And I was really sticking around Christianity because I wanted to prove that I could still stay in this and not have to believe all those things. And I realized, like 6 months into that phase, that I was kind of living out of spite. Like, I was staying in this because I was stubborn and I wanted to prove that I could stay in this. And I realized that's just not really a sustainable way to be thinking about God. And so I really wanted to have pillars of my faith that stood on their own and not just in opposition to all the things I disagreed with. And that's really been something I've been working on building, because you can deconstruct all you want, and that's a really good and healthy thing. But at the end of the day, you still want to have something that you're also building up. And so one thing I've really been hanging my hat on these days is in the book of John, when Jesus says that he comes to bring us abundant life, and what that abundant life means to me and to the world around me. And one thing that keeps coming up for me is that we can't have abundant life if we don't have justice for people, if people don't have the means to live abundantly. And so I've really been thinking about what it means to be a Christian and to be working towards providing spaces for people to live abundantly. And so justice is one thing that comes up. And another thing for me is just internal peace. And as we do justice work, I think it's really easy to get caught up in the anger and the kind of the spite that I was talking about, and just wanting to go and fix everything. And that's a really good thing when it leads you to do good, but there also has to be this internal sense of peace. Like, you have to be okay with yourself, and you have to know that you can live in this body and be okay with it, and not just be going out into the world and doing all these things and not being able to live and be at peace with yourself. And so the two things I'm working on these days are justice, because that's what Jesus asked us to do, and I think that's what we need to live abundantly, and then finding peace within myself to do that work well and to do it sustainably. And I think as I continue processing and building up this kind of new version of faith that I have, there's going to be more added to that. But I think that's kind of a healthy place to be in, to not really know what the pillars are going to be, but to know that I can hang my hat on these two things, and to know that God is love, and everything we're doing revolves around that. We live abundantly because we have love, and because God loves us. So that's what I've been processing in my own personal faith these days. And one way that I've seen this come up in the work I'm doing at Colonial is with the youth. And I think they're people who are really with me when it comes to matters of injustice. And one thing I'm really passionate about, especially with youth, is creating spaces for them to see their own stories as individual stories of God, and also part of this collective ongoing story of what it means to be people of justice and people of love and people of peace. And that means providing spaces for them to go out and act out that justice in whatever ways they're passionate about, and also creating spaces for them to sit with themselves and to know themselves, and to be the most truly themselves, because I think that God is within each of us, and the more that we get to know ourselves and become ourselves, the more we're getting to know God and becoming more like God. And so I think there's this internal sense of peace I'm trying to establish with them, and to really make them feel like they're seen and that they're known and their individual story is important, and that all of our stories are wrapped up together in God's world, and to see our stories as part of God's collective story too, that they're not alone in their story and that we're all together in this. We all have things we bring to the table, and when we bring our full self to the table, we're able to better see other people. And when we've wrestled with our own pain and our own past and all of our shame, we're creating spaces for other people to share theirs and to be honest about theirs. And I think that's what it means to have abundant life, especially for this group, to come together and to see each other in our own stories, and then continue to create spaces at the table for other people to do that. So thanks for listening to my thoughts on where I'm at in processing all of this, and I hope that some of it might have resonated with you all.